What's going on, everybody? Brezzy43 here. I am back with our next video. Today we're going to be doing another team building video. We're going to follow the same sort of format that we did in my last two videos. I'm going to be talking about a restricted Pokemon for Series 10. I'm going to be um, highlighting some of the, like, basically what the Pokemon is, how best to use it, and then some of the most common partners in the metagame. I'll build a team with those, and then I will build a final team of a variation of the restricted Pokemon that I personally developed and am excited to use in the metagame. Um, I did some tweaking here. My last video, I took a look at it, and it looked like some of my browser windows were really zoomed out. So I zoomed them in a little bit. Hopefully that should help you better visualize um, the the screens and what I'm looking at. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So first of all, I'm super hyped. VGC Series 10 is available under doubles. The metagame's up, which means that you can now play it on Showdown. So I will definitely be doing that as well. Um, so first and foremost, let's go ahead and pull Xerneas up. Okay, here's Xerneas. So Xerneas is one of the most powerful legendary Pokemon they've ever made, um, for some really interesting reasons. So I'm going to talk about Xerneas just in general here for those of you that don't know. Xerneas is a fairy type. It was the legendary Pokemon in the game Pokemon X, which is when fairy type was first introduced. Xerneas, if we take a look at its stats, has the exact same stat distribution as Yveltal, its counterpoint from Pokemon Y. Um, it has an ability called Fairy Aura. While this Pokemon is active, a fairy move used by any Pokemon has 1.33 times power. So it's basically a free Life Orb, a little bit better than Life Orb boost to Xerneas' fairy attacks. Additionally, you've got 131 in both of your attack stats, so you technically could run this physical or special, and 126 HP, which is all very good stats. And the rest of these are solid. I would never say that any of these stats are bad. They're solid stats. 95 defense, totally reasonable. 98 special defense, again, totally reasonable. And 99 speed is reasonably quick. It's not as slow as Kyogre and Groudon and things like that, but it's not as fast as things like Calyrex, Shadow, Zacian, etc. Right? So, what makes Xerneas so good? Well, it's two things, actually. Um, in the past, Xerneas has been a dominating force in the doubles, or in the double restricted metagames, both in 2016 and 2019. Xerneas got paired with things like Primal Groudon, Primal Kyogre, Rayquaza, etc. Let's go ahead and just pull up. This was James Beck's 2019 Worlds team, and this he took third place that year. And this is a really cool team for to highlight the example that I'm talking about of two restricted Pokemon, good supports that support both of them, and really forces your opponent into a really messy mind game. So your opponent has to choose kind of how they're going to lead, and what works against one of these restricteds doesn't necessarily work against the other one. So, for example, if you lead Kyogre Tornadus, then your opponent's going to there's a distinct way to beat that, right? You can try to set Trick Room, you can try to try to match speed control, you can try to punish the Kyogre by switching in Groudon to change the weather and whatever. But Xerneas is the opposite end of that, and if your opponent leads to beat your Kyogre, then they could just get punished if you lead Xerneas, and vice versa. If they lead to beat your Xerneas, then they could just get beat by your Kyogre, right? So we haven't actually talked about other than the fact that Xerneas creates mind games because it was in a double restricted. It was very difficult to play around. It's a very powerful Pokemon when positioned accordingly. So what exactly does Xerneas do? Let's go ahead and get these Pokemon out of here. Xerneas has a unique move called Geomancy. Geomancy is a move that takes 2 turns to execute, 1 turn to charge, and then it happens on the second turn. But it increases Xerneas' special attack, special defense, and speed by 2 stages. So it's a double quiver dance for one move that happens over 2 turns, right? So Xerneas can carry a power herb, which allows once per battle a 2-turn move will complete in 1 turn. So you can effectively position your Xerneas to go for a Geomancy in 1 turn complete because of Power Herb and immediately get +2 to speed, Spadef, and special attack. And then the next turn start dealing tons of stab fairy damage, fairy aura boosted fairy damage at +2, right? This was very powerful and very difficult to play around because of the double restricted, like we talked about, right? If you tried to, the distinct things that beat Xerneas, like Taunt and Roar and Whirlwind, don't beat Kyogre, and vice versa. Things that beat Kyogre don't necessarily beat Xerneas, right? So Xerneas has always been a force because of this Geomancy. It can set up and become a huge both offensive force and defensive tank. 126 HP is very, very good. 98 special defense when doubled is very, very good. And then you can offset the weak defense stat or the weaker defense stat with Intimidate, right? So Xerneas, when positioned properly, is can become very threatening very quickly. This is a Pokemon that I'm particularly very interested in using. In Series 8, I used a lot of Laprasization because of its setup potential, and positioning was really important. Switching in and out was you often had to predict what your opponent was doing. You pivoted a lot, and I really liked that playstyle. I think personally that playstyle, learning how to master that playstyle, makes you a better Pokemon player in the long run, and I enjoy that playstyle myself. So Xerneas is more of that for me, so that's why I'm really excited to play with Xerneas. Um, so what types of Pokemon benefit Xerneas? If you have been playing for a while, you're going to know this answer right away. If you're newer to the game, I'll tell you here a couple of things that you can do with Xerneas that make it um, really powerful, or it can be, sorry, really good support Pokemon to pair next to Xerneas. The first one is Redirection. Redirection has historically been very, very good at helping Xerneas, or helping any Pokemon like Snorlax, like Xerneas, like Trick Room Setters, whatever, at setting up what they want to do. So this comes in the form of 3 Pokemon primarily. The first one that you might be thinking of right away is Amoonguss. Amoonguss is very good in these restricted metagames. Being a grass type, picks up resistances to water and electric. That is really important. And it also has Rage Powder and Spore, which are both phenomenal support moves. Coupled with Regenerator is really, really nice. Amoonguss, option A for redirection, in my opinion. Option B, or another really good redirector, is something with Follow Me, like Indeedee. Indeedee female, or even Togekiss. Both these Pokemon can be reasonable. Togekiss is not as good because it does share a weakness with Xerneas, so you're not exactly redirecting a pot. One of the things that a lot of one of the things that I like to do when I pick a redirector is I like to pick a redirector that is either neutral or resisted to a hit. So for example, when I played Lapras Amoonguss, if my opponent led an electric type, they didn't want to, like Thundurus, they didn't want to risk attacking my Lapras with an electric attack, because if it got redirected to Amoonguss, it wouldn't deal very much damage. But they then would use a flying move into Amoonguss, which I could then predict and protect and whatever. So I like Indeedee a lot. Indeedee has Follow Me and Psychic Terrain. Psychic Terrain blocks priority moves like Fake Out from hitting your Xerneas, so your opponent can't Fake Out your Xerneas. And Redirection from Indeedee forces your opponent to attack Indeedee, which I really like. A couple of side picks. Like I said, Togekiss is one of them. You could use Togekiss. But one of the other ones that I want to highlight that is very popular right now, it was picking up in popularity in Series 8, but now it's very popular, is Volcarona. Volcarona got immensely buffed by the removal of Dynamax, because, so did Xerneas for that matter. Historically, throughout all of Dynamax, setting up a Pokemon with Belly Drum like Snorlax, or Belly Drum Azumarill, or Geomancy Xerneas was really difficult because of how powerful and offensive Dynamax was. You often couldn't you often weren't able to position yourself to set up your Pokemon when your opponent could max and just hit you with a really strong max attack. So talking about Volcarona now, Volcarona was in a really rough spot because of because of Dynamax, because of all the max airstreams that were running around in the format. Um, Bug is historically not known to be the best type. Offensively, it's very lackluster, and defensively, it has weaknesses to really common things like flying, fire, and rock. But with the removal of Dynamax and the downward trend of flying stab in general, Volcarona got a nice buff. Additionally, Volcarona is a fire bug type, which makes it resist all of Zacian's common attacks. Fire resists steel, fire resists fairy, and bug resists fighting. So you those are the three most common attacks that Zacian carries, and Zacian is the biggest threat to Xerneas. So Volcarona with Rage Powder can redirect Zacian's attacks and force Zacian to hit Volcarona. Additionally, Urshifu is really popular, which doesn't necessarily match up that well into Volcarona. Rillaboom's popular, which if you can't redirect Rillaboom's attacks because grass types are immune to the effects of Rage Powder, but you can offensively pressure Rillaboom with a fire attack or a bug attack, right? Um, Additionally, Volcarona has a very good ability called Flame Body. Flame Body gives you a 30% chance to burn a Pokemon that makes contact with Volcarona. This includes Zacian, this includes Urshifu, this includes Rillaboom. Because of the removal of Dynamax, Dynamax moves didn't make contact with your Pokemon, including things like Max Knuckle. But now that that's gone, Volcarona gets a huge buff. So Volcarona is a really popular pick right now. It makes me really excited because I love Volcarona and I think it's a really cool Pokemon. And I plan on building around it as well. Um, so I really like what Volcarona has to offer, especially when paired with Xerneas. So step one, checked. Redirection in Xerneas, very, very good. What's another thing that is good with Xerneas? Well, Fake Out. Fake Out is another means of setting up your Xerneas, and um, it allows you to prevent something really offensive from hitting your Xerneas, like Zacian, for example. They can't go for Behemoth Blade into your Xerneas if they're flinched, right? So, what are some good fake out users? Well, I shouldn't have to tell you. Incineroar goes on these teams, goes on every team. Intimidate and fake out, really, really, really solid options. This is probably the best fake outer next to Xerneas, in my opinion. Um, you are a fire type, so you can hit steel types for reasonable damage. Intimidate plus fake out is a nasty combination. Really good at supporting Xerneas. Additionally, another fake out user that's really strong from this generation is Rillaboom. Rillaboom can also go on the same team as Incineroar, and it gets fake out. So you have two really strong fake out users here that both have really strong physical attack stats and can offensively pressure certain things with their strong stab attacks. So another good fake outer here. A couple of off meta picks that I'm interested in myself. I don't know how good they're going to be just yet. I've seen people using Mienshao. Mienshao has inner focus, which makes it immune to fake out and immune to intimidate. And additionally, it gets fake out itself and close combat and wide guard. Wide guard I've talked about being really, really good in the restricted metagames, and close combat off of 125 attack will KO things like Incineroar, especially since you can't be intimidated. So Mienshao is really cool. A couple of other ones to highlight. I think Hitmontop could be really cool, especially when paired with Volcarona to support the Xerneas because you've got Fake Out and you've got Intimidate and you still get Wide Guard and Close Combat. So you trade the difference between Mienshao and Hitmontop is Intimidate and offensive prowess for better defensive capabilities and Intimidate, right? So you're getting inner focus and close combat off of 125 attack versus 95 attack, Intimidate, better bulk, and yeah, the same moveset effectively. And the last one I want to mention is Scrafty. Now, Scrafty is a little bit different if you wanted to take your team into a little bit more of a trick room route. Scrafty does get Intimidate and Fake Out, and it does get things like Low Kick um, and things like that that off of these really solid defensive stats is really good. Now, being a dark fighting type that is not Urshifu is a little bit rough, but you actually can do decent damage to Urshifu as well, especially inside of Trick Room. So yeah, so we've established now Fake Out is really good with Xerneas, and so is Redirection. What else do I think should be on a Xerneas team? I think that you should have really strong offensive options to pressure things that Xerneas either doesn't match up well against or well, that's basically it, but it goes into two categories: things that hit Xerneas for super effective damage, and things that Xerneas can't hit very hard. So Volcarona kind of checks both of these boxes. Again, 135 special attack means that you can deal really strong offensive damage um, without having to necessarily EV too much into it. If we take a look here, I have this calc pulled up. 36 special attack with overheat will KO most Zacian spreads without taking too much in return. Um, and this is like the most common, 4 HP. It even goes up like if you were 252 Jolly, um, and then you were like, I don't know, let's say 220, and you put a little bit more into your bulk. This would KO all the way up to um, 56, which is a pretty reasonable amount of, or 52, which is a pretty reasonable amount of bulk in Zacian, which is probably more bulk than you're going to see a lot of people on ladder using, because a lot of people are just going to do 252, 252. So 36 with overheat gives you a little bit of extra wiggle room to KO, making Volcarona really nice into steel types such as Zacian that pressure Xerneas. Additionally, I think Landorus with Sheer Force and Life Orb, Landorus Therian as well works for this, but I particularly am interested in this Landorus. Um, Sheer Force, Life Orb, plus Earth Power. We talked about this in one of my last videos. This is a ton of multipliers to your damage, and there's not a lot of steel types out there that appreciate taking a really strong stab Earth Power from Landorus Incarnate. So this is another option. A couple of other things that could work would basically just be any strong fire or ground Pokemon that that work nicely into the like the steel types that Xerneas doesn't want to face. If you could make it work, something like Excadrill could be kind of cool. Um, Other ground types in the metagame, Landorus, Therian would be kind of cool. Other fire types could be like Entei. Entei could be really cool next to Xerneas. I think Entei gets Roar, so Entei could be a way to roar out opposing Xerneas, and Sacred Fire is really cool next to like burn it to be able to burn physical attackers, right? So these are some really good offensive Pokemon that can deal with the things that Xerneas doesn't want to deal with. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about the most common team that I've been seeing, or variations of the team that I've been seeing on ladder, or in these showdown rooms. That's right here. This is I've seen streamers like JoeUX9 using this team. I've seen streamers like Ashton Cox and James Eakes. These guys who've been looking at Xerneas, they've been using elements of this team in their Xerneas teams as well. They're not necessarily running these exact six Pokemon, but they are running other variations. Some of them include Regieleki, some of them include other things like that. But this would be an example of a Xerneas team that would be very like meta oriented, right? It's going to use a lot of the popular Pokemon from the metagame. You've got Redirection, Volcarona, you've got Fake Out, Intimidate, Incin, Fake Out, Grassy Surge, Rillaboom, Water Shifu for a Fire Water Grass Core, and Landorus with Life Orb to deal a ton of damage to um, those opposing steel types. Now, I don't really want to talk too much about these middle three just because you've seen them played, you know what they do. There's not really much to say. Incin might want Taunt on this team just because it's a little bit weak to Trick Room, but Incin, Rillaboom, and Urshifu, I'll put it back up. I'll move them over to the side because I don't really want to talk about them. You guys know what they do. I don't really have much else that I can add about it. They're just good Pokemon, right? I'm going to focus instead on these three. So Xerneas, in my opinion, there's two different ways you can play Xerneas. You can play Modest with Bulk. I personally don't like this spread or this way of playing it. I prefer Timid, but Modest with a good amount of special attack. You basically what you're going to be EVing for here is your speed and to survive a specific hit, right? If you EV for 139, 139 speed, you outspeed Regieleki after you've Geomancied. So you've got you've got the ability to um, go for fake out into Regieleki, or and then Geomancy. 139 times 2 is 278, which is 1 point faster than Timid Aleki. So this would allow you um, to outspeed Regieleki after Geomancy. And then the rest you're going to have to do some calcs with. This is just a random spread. This isn't really calced for anything, but you're going to want to calc for certain attacks. I believe that with some investment, you can survive. Let's find out. If you intimidate and you're 252, I believe that you can survive. You're going to want to be, we said 138. Let's see if we can just make it spread really quick. Not 138, 139, excuse me. So if you were going to go, see this is, yeah, this Pokemon is the Xerneas killer. So you're going to want to probably invest pretty heavily into this stat. My guess is probably going to be up to like, I don't know, 130 maybe. And then you could put quite a bit into HP as well. I mean, as you can see, it's going to take a lot, right? So maybe we do something like 140, 116. We have a little bit left to work with here. We have to put at least 1 point in here. We have 24 left to work with. Okay. All right, so we could take more out of special attack if you want, but I would recommend not doing that. But we could potentially see if we can get this calc to where we want it. Looks like we're close. This should do it right here. Okay, maybe we can't get it. Okay, there it is. So if you were to run, this is a crazy spread, and I would not recommend doing this. But this technically, based on our calc, would take -1 Behemoth Blade from Zacian. That is a ton of investment, but it's technically there, right? You don't need to run a lot into these other stats because you have, um, Geomancy to boost you up, and then this should still, if we were 68, and then Moonblast at +2, will 2-hit KO in return, right? So you basically you'd hit them with Moonblast, take the Behemoth Blade in return after Geomancy, and then hit them again, right? I don't like this spread very much, but I don't like running Modest Xerneas very much, but I think that this is something you could definitely do. What I prefer to do with Xerneas is I prefer to run Timid. The reason why is that one of the things that Xerneas players in the past figured out, good Xerneas players in the past, was that you don't have to set up Geomancy for Xerneas to be a threat. You can rely on Xerneas' Fairy Aura and high special attack stat to be threatening without setting up. There's a lot of counterplay to Xerneas. There's Clear Smogamungus. There's Roar and or Whirlwind on different things that can force Xerneas to switch out and waste its power herb, right? Because Roar has negative priority. So if your opponent goes for if your opponent has Roar and Incineroar and you go for Geomancy on turn 1 and they roar you, then you've wasted your power herb and you're forced to switch. So often it's better to play around those things and only Geomancy if you have to. So you can run you can use Timid Xerneas to just outspeed things like Urshifu and different things like that and just go for the really strong fairy attacks right away. And this allows you to present more offensive pressure and be able to function alongside things like Tailwind and stuff much more easily. And you can still run some bulk. The Modest set, in my opinion, is a bit more reliant on Geomancy. It doesn't really work that well outside of it because you're kind of hitting an awkward speed tier where a handful of Pokemon in the mid 90s will outspeed you. So if I was going to run Timid, I think a really common spread in the past was something like, it would probably have to be revisited, but like let's see if we can take -2. Let's see if we can take this. So let's go Timid and let's go 252, and then let's get this out of here. Okay. Okay, so we already take -2. Can we make -1 a roll? That's what I want to know. So -1 Behemoth Blade. We have a fair amount to work with. So we have 256 EVs to work with. So I would imagine we would probably be running, I think a really common spread in the past was 4, 68, 76, 108. So we can let's see how much this takes. 108. I think this was specifically designed to survive something. So keeping this in mind and still running a good amount of special attack, 160 is a nice round number, because it when doubled it deals a good amount of damage, and it looks like it's still two shots the base Zacian spread, right? You still have a guaranteed two shot on 252, 252, so that's nice. So let's try just rearranging this a little bit and see what we can hit. That's better. 56.3 gives us a bit more to work with. 50, okay. Remember, Xerneas has a really high HP stat, so you're often going to be, if you're calculating for something specific, you're going to want to have more defense, or more into one of your defenses. But if you are just trying to calc, or if you're just trying to EV to survive as many hits as possible, then you're going to want to put a lot into your HP. That's usually how I think about it. So if I want to survive something specific, I'm going to look to the defense and the special defense stats. If I just want to, like Amoonguss often has a ton of HP invested in it because it's just taking attacks from all directions, nothing specific, right? So we went back to 56 here. Let's see if we go back to 50. 62, okay. 50 again. 43.8, that's not bad. 43.8. 43.8. 37.5. So we could go 180 defense, and 4 HP, and still run the rest of the spread. That might be a little bit too, like 37.5 is okay. I think anything above 30% is a little bit like, I don't like to mess with it often, but there was something that we could have gotten here. Let me look here quick. 43.8. 43.8. I thought there was one that was 50. I thought there was one more that was in the 30s that we could have hit. Maybe I'm wrong. Did I mess up my... No, 184 is right. Okay. No, yeah, 184. Okay, so let's go back the other way here quick. The reality is that I don't think I want a hard calc for this, just because it doesn't really seem like that much of an improvement. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit that 41 the first time we can hit 40%, and we're going to roll with that. I think it's this next one. Yep. So we're going to go 44 and put the rest here. Okay, so this gives us a 43.8% chance to survive the -1, or the neutral rather, Behemoth Blade. So I think that's fine. That still gets us a reasonable amount here. It still hits our special defense here. Yeah, I think that's fine. So we'll go ahead and roll with that. I don't want to spend too much more time on that, but this would be a timid spread that I would prefer. And on the timid spread, I think you want Dazzling Gleam. You don't really want coverage moves on Xerneas. Let me just get that out there now. Singles, yes, sure. Singles, it's important to hit things with Thunder, Flash Cannon, whatever. But Xerneas in doubles, you really want Protect. Protect allows you to Protect to reposition, protect to play defensively, protect to avoid fake out, whatever you need to do with protect. Protect is really good on your damage dealers to try to keep them alive, right? Generally, like protect isn't as needed on supports, but it's really important um, on your damage dealers, right? Geomancy is the whole reason why you're using this Pokemon. Gotta have Geomancy. Moonblast is your strongest stab, and in my opinion, undroppable. I think you just have to have it. The last move is Dazzling Gleam. Now, the reason why you have a choice, in my opinion, between Dazzling Gleam and Substitute, and then I don't think you should run anything else. Um, because you get this extra Fairy Aura boost to your stat, I don't think that you need to have. I don't think that you need to be invested in another coverage move when you just get a free Life Orb to your Fairy attacks. So spread Dazzling Gleam, Moonblast for single target. This is what I would run, in my opinion. All right, so that's enough about Xerneas. Volcarona. In my personal opinion, there's two ways to run Volcarona. We talked about Volcarona being really nice with Rage Powder. I think Citrus Berry is probably the most common item right now. I don't necessarily think it's the best, but it's really good. This EV spread right here survives Surging Strikes from Urshifu. If you now Surging Strikes has a 30% chance to burn on every single hit, so you have 3 hits, 30% each to burn. If for some reason you get really unlucky, you get really unlucky. But I think that that Citrus Berry plus 236 and 204 bold will take Surging Strikes if they don't burn. But if they burn, then you obviously easily take it. The 36 special attack we talked about with Overheat being nice to be to kill Xerneas or to kill Zacian. If you don't want to run Overheat, if you want to run Heat Wave or Flamethrower, you don't have to run any special attack other than just the value point if you don't want to. If you're going to run Whirlwind, which I think is a really cool move, I think you might want to think about running Safety Goggles. Safety Goggles would allow Flamethrower to be really good too, in my opinion, or Overheat as well, as opposed to Heat Wave. Like if you're gonna, this would be like a default. This last move could be Protect, it could be Will-O-Wisp, it could be yeah, but if you were going to run Safety Goggles, I think that Whirlwind and Overheat become a lot more enticing because you can ignore a Moongus and other redirectors and still hit the thing you want to hit. Um, Additionally, another way you could take this would be Timid Max Speed. If you wanted to go Timid, you would probably drop quite a bit out of HP and then some amount out of defense, and you'd go. I think the spread that I was looking at was. I think it is. No, that. And that will survive Surging Strikes if you burn. With Citrus Berry as well, you'll get it. So that's the two ways to run Volcarona, in my opinion, and I think they're both equally good. You could do some testing with both and figure out which one you like more. And the last brief thing I want to touch on is Landorus. I think that there's two different ways you could run this Pokemon. I think you want to be Timid Max Speed. Landorus will one-shot Zacian with Earth Power, so you don't have to necessarily EV too heavy into it. There are some calcs you could do to give yourself a little bit of extra bulk. But the only thing I want to highlight is that Sludge Bomb, Earth Power, and Protect, in my opinion, are like for sure's. You definitely want to run those moves. The last move could be U-turn, which would give you a nice way to reposition. The other move that it does get is Substitute, which I really like. I think Substitute's really cool. I think it gives you a lot of opportunity to outplay your opponent, where if you're representing fake out pressure, your opponent might play defensively and double protect, and then you can set up a substitute, right? Excuse me. So I think Landorus is sweet, and I think Substitute Landorus is really cool. So I think that would be a really solid meta Xerneas team to start with, and something that I would definitely approve of and think would be really solid. Now let's talk about the Xerneas team that I would use, that I've been building, that I think is really cool. I really like this Xerneas spread, so I'm going to take it. I'm going to go here and I'm going to paste it. So I compared the Xerneas' playstyle to Lapras Zacian of old for me in Series 8. So for me, my redirectors are going to be Amoonguss. My redirector is going to be Amoonguss, and my Intimidator is going to be Incineroar. This is metagame. One of the things I was looking at doing was instead of Amoonguss running Volk, so Volcarona and Hitmontop. These two Pokemon do share a flying weakness, but Hitmontop with Wide Guard covers you from the most common, excuse me, the most common rock attack, which is Rock Slide, and you get Fake Out and Intimidate as well as Volcarona Redirection. This is another interesting combination of Pokemon that you can use. It's been used historically in the past, and I really liked it, but I'm going to stick with Amoonguss Incineroar for now. Okay, we're going to come back to the EV spreads in a minute once we highlight the rest of the team. The last Pokemon, or the next Pokemon that I came to the conclusion that I wanted was Landorus. I think Sheer Force Life Orb Landorus is really, really strong. I've been seeing people using it, and I've been impressed by it every time that I've seen it. Protect, Earth Power, Sludge Bomb, and Substitute are going to be the moves that I'm going to use. In my opinion, these are probably the best moves. I might try some testing with U-Turn, but the team that I ended up developing doesn't really benefit from U-Turn as much as Substitute, in my opinion. Excuse me. All right, so this was the team this was what I started with, and then I started thinking about what did my Lapras team have that gave it another dynamic, right? One of the things that I talk a lot about in team building is that you want to have immediate offense. You want to have the threat of immediate offense that you can present, right? So thinking about that old Lapras team, it was the most common pairing so Lapras, Amoonguss, and Incineroarization. That was like mode A, but that mode's really slow. Lapras is not very bulky, or it's not very fast, but it's very bulky. Amoonguss and Incineroar, same thing, not very fast but bulky. And then you have Zacian. Um, so Zacian on those teams would often come paired with Assault Vest Thundurus because Assault Vest Thundurus is really strong in the metagame, and um, you were you were able to present a really strong offensive front, right? You didn't want to intimidate Zacian because you'd power up the Thundurus. Thundurus could max and give Zacian speed boosts, give Zacian attack boosts, whatever. So I started thinking about what I could do on this team to have an offensive mode, and I started thinking about Tailwind. Tailwind seems really, really strong. Xerneas can benefit from Tailwind, especially with this timid build, because it has some immediate offensive pressure that it can present without having to go for the Geomancy. And I arrived at Crobat. Now, Crobat does a couple of things that are not necessarily great um, for pivoting and positioning, and it shares two weaknesses. It shares two types. It shares poison typing with Amoonguss, and it shares flying typing with Landorus, which overlaps some of our weaknesses, right? We've got overlapping psychic weaknesses. Um, we've got overlapping ice weaknesses. But Crobat was only going to be a part of one of my modes, and that mode probably would not include Amoonguss, right? Amoonguss is really slow, a redirector, not usually going to be going with Tailwind, and Tailwind was mostly going to be there for the offensive teams, right? Tailwind was going to be able to let me keep pace with something like Calyrex Shadow or whatever. So I wasn't necessarily worried about the Amoonguss one. But Crobat was a Pokemon that I was looking at using because of Inner Focus and because of Tailwind and Brave Bird. And this Pokemon is one of my favorite Pokemon, and I think it is really uniquely placed. So that left me in. I had these 5 Pokemon. I started thinking about what complements these modes I've been developing. So just to highlight them, I've got Xerneas, Amoonguss, Incineroar. I've got Landorus, Amoonguss, or Landorus, Incineroar. I've got Crobat to set Tailwind for either Xerneas or for Landorus, or I could lead Incineroar, Crobat, and guarantee Trick Room that, or guarantee Tailwind that way. So I really liked both of those, all of those things, and I was thinking about a Pokemon that could help me out in all of those modes. Additionally, I've got a Fire Grass, but no Water type. Um, and I was starting to think about some of my restricted Pokemon. I don't have a phenomenal matchup into Kyogre. Landorus and Incineroar don't really appreciate Kyogre. Amoonguss is great into Kyogre, but Xerneas doesn't really want to take a boosted Water Spout until, or a full HP Water Spout until it's been boosted itself. And I may have to match Tailwinds with my Kyogre opponent, which would mean that I would have to bring Crobat as well. So I started thinking about water types, and I arrived at Dracovish. Dracovish is really, really strong um, without Dynamax because now your opponent can't just max and double their HP and not take a bunch of damage. Strong Jaw plus Choice Scarf is really, really good. For this Pokemon, you're able to outspeed a lot of things, and you take advantage of Tailwind, right? And you also can clean up for Xerneas. So let's recap. Xerneas, Amoonguss, Incineroar, Dracovish. Pretty solid mode, right? You've got a Firewater Grass that can switch around. You've got really strong offensive capabilities between Xerneas and Dracovish. Um, Dracovish can complement this mode and be led and bring Xerneas in the back for late game, or play cleanup after Xerneas has done a bunch of damage. Alternatively, this Pokemon benefits immensely from Tailwind and can go on the offensive mode of like Incineroar, Crobat, Xerneas, Dracovish, or whatever, right? I felt like Dracovish was a nice solid pickup for this team, and it complemented all the modes really well. So from there, I started to think about my EVs and my moves. So Landorus, we talked about. Landorus is probably, I think, timid max speed is very important. I don't think you necessarily need to have, um, you don't need to do anything fancy with your HP right away. I don't think that this is necessary. I think this is a bit overkill on the damage department, but I haven't tested this team out enough yet to know. Um, so once I play some games with the team, I may end up dropping this special attack stat a bit for some bulk. But timid max speed, I think, is most important. Crobat, really easy. Crobat's going to take the Focus Sash here. The reason why is I think that setting Tailwind and having a Focus Sash Tailwind setter with base 130 speed against Calyrex is going to be really important. So we're going to be Jolly, and we're going to be max speed. And the nice thing about excuse me, being Focus Sash is that I can just run max attack as well. Kyogre or Crobat is unfake outable and unintimidatable, and it has 130 speed. So Calyrex would attack first and go for Expanding Force, and then and then drop me down to my Sash. Then Tailwind would go up. Then the Indeedee would do something, or whoever the Calyrex is paired with, right? So that makes our moves pretty easy. The attacking move is going to be Brave Bird. I've been watching people use Crobat with Brave Bird, and it's so good. 90 base attack is nothing to scoff at. Brave Bird is 120 base power. We've seen Talonflame do work with with a lower attack stat in Brave Bird, and Crobat's not able to be intimidated. So I really like that. The rest of the moves are probably going to be support. We're going to run Tailwind, and then we're going to run. I think Taunt is really good, and I think we want Taunt on this team somewhere just to help keep certain things in check. And then the last move, I think we're going to do some testing with Quick Guard. This team could be a little bit weak to Fake Out, and so being able to use Quick Guard to keep your allies safe from Fake Out and Grassy Glide and things like that is going to be really, really important. The next really easy Pokemon to EV is Dracovish. Choice Scarf, you're just going to go Adamant, and you're going to go max attack and max speed. This outspeeds a lot of things at Choice Scarf. You hit 190, I believe. So you're able to outspeed all the way up to Cinderace, I believe, is what my calc told me. Like, let's take a look once. 127 times 1.5. 190. Yep. So actually, you could technically, to be more optimal. Nope, I lied. That sucks. So you could, you want to be this speed because you want to outspeed Cinderace, right? You hit 190, and Cinderace hits 119, which is going to be plus 10, plus 32, times 1.1. Right? Did I do that right? Let's just pull Cinderace up quick. Not that Cinderace is necessarily going to be all that like meta defining right now. 188, and we hit 190 with Dracovish. So Dracovish, Choice Scarf, Strong Jaw, Vicious Rend. or Vicious Rend. This is the one that you want, the most commonly used move, the move that I'm probably going to be clicking the most. The next few moves are going to just be filler at this point. Rocks. I think I want Crunch. That was one move I looked at and I thought I wanted. Crunch is really good against Calyrex. After I've got Tailwind up, I can switch in Dracovish and pressure it right away. Rock Slide seems really good, and then Psychic Fangs or something like that gives you some nice um, coverage. I have a feeling the most commonly used moves are going to be Vicious Rend and Crunch, but maybe if my opponent's got screens, I'll use Psychic Fangs, Dracovish. These are all strong jaw boosted, except for Rock Slide, which is another thing as well. But Rock Slide's just nice to have access to. So that's these 4 Pokemon taken care of. The next 2 I got a little bit stuck with. So I've got Focus Sash taken, so Amoonguss can't have it. Amoonguss probably is going to run a berry. And Incineroar could take the citrus or could take the safety goggles. I want to have multiple answers to sleep, so I'm going to run safety goggles here. So I've got Taunt, Crobat, I've got safety goggles, Incin, and I've got a grass type. So I'm insulated a bit against sleep. So Fake Out, Parting Shot are for sures. And I valued Snarl. I think Incineroar is going to be really important to my Calyrex Shadow matchup. So I like having Snarl somewhere on the team. And then Flare Blitz is fine for now. Maybe I'll end up changing that and running, like, if I'm finding that my Xerneas matchup is a little bit rough, I'll be running, I could run Roar here. I could run something like that. I have Crobat to resist and hit it with Brave Bird and taunt it, and I've got a Moongus that resists it as well. So I'm not necessarily too worried about my Xerneas matchup, but only practice will tell. And I'm going to start with the same EV spread that I've been using this entire time, which is going to be this. Let me just do a quick... Okay. Let's take all of this out once and see what happens. Well, we don't want all of it out. We have 36. Okay, so it looks like Sacred Sword and Flare Blitz does so much damage. I don't have the value point though. I may end up wanting some speed, so that's something that I might have to look at. But 36 defense for now is fine, and we'll go Careful Nature, and we'll leave Incineroar like this. The last Pokemon is Amoonguss. So Amoonguss, one of the things that I started to do on my Lapras team was that I use Amoonguss a lot on that team, and you should think about Regenerator. Regenerator regens 1/3 of your HP rounded down. So the optimal number is not actually max, it's actually just a little bit less than that. And I can show you on the calculator. 219 divided by 3 is 73. 221 divided by 3 is still going to be 73. So by taking 2 points out, you actually give yourself the same amount of recovery for switching out and free up stats for your other EVs. And then any increment from that downward, you're going to want to go down by 3, right? So 219 is what we're at right now. If we go 218, 72, 217, 72, 216, 72. So you're going to want to go down by increments of 3 from here if you're going to reduce the HP stat. 236 seems fine. I'm going to go with a Calm Nature rather than Sassy 0 speed, just because I do have Tailwind, and I don't know if it's going to come up yet, but maybe being not 0 speed might help me spore certain things inside Tailwind. But I'm going to go, I think 188 was a really common, I don't remember what I think it takes boosted Xern really easily. Let's take a look at this. Let's just say it's modest +2, and let's look at Amoonguss. Doubles Rage Powder support, 236, 188. So this looks like it takes 220. Looks like it takes, it's a 3-shot for Moonblast, but I'm going to just stick with, where does it get the jumps? Okay, 156, so I would have to put another 80 to get to the next one. I think I'm just going to go with this. And then the rest will just go into defense. I've got Intimidate, so I can nullify that. The moves are going to be pretty standard. Protect, Rage Powder, Spore, and then the last move I think is going to be Clear Smog. I have Sludge Bomb on Landorus, so I could technically run like Energy Ball or something here, but I don't really expect any grass types outside of Kyogre um, that won't be also hit for poison damage for super effective. So um, the Clear Smog is nice tech against Xerneas. But maybe I'll end up running Energy Ball or something. Only time will tell. Sludge Bomb is also good too, but we have Sludge Bomb here. Um, and then for the item, I think I'm going to start with Akka or Koba Berry, but I might end up running something else too, depending on how the testing goes. But for now, we'll put Akka on here. So this is my team. This is the one I'm going to be testing out for Xerneas first. Lots of cool modes here. I can go hard Xerneas. I can go offensive with Crobat Tailwind. I've got Dracovish to complement all of that, and I've got Landorus with Substitute to be a really offensive threat. So yeah, this was a bit of a longer one. Xerneas is a really cool archetype that I've never played myself, but I'm really excited to use. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you learned something as well. That's the goal ultimately, is that I share my knowledge with you as I learn it. And I've been playing this game for a very long time. I just haven't been playing competitively for very long. Um, so I've been around the game since the American release of Pokemon Red and Blue. So um, I love Pokemon. It's really fun, and this mathematical side of things is something I really enjoy. Um, so I hope that you all learned something and maybe use some of my spreads. And let me know what you think of the team in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. And I hope I see you all in the next video. I will catch you all later.